Welcome to my closing reflection vlog for Fun and Public FSEM. Let's start off with just coming to DU. So coming here to DU was a little bit different for me. I'm from Portland. I've lived there my whole life. I love my city. That's why I'm wearing the hat right now. But it was different coming here, definitely having to adjust to an entirely new group of people, different setting, different everything. And the first FSEM class we had, I actually made a few of my best buddies that I still have now. So that was good, definitely. I definitely adjusted quick, and I think FSEM definitely helped with that for sure. But getting to the class. So the readings we did at the beginning, I think were probably the most important and influential ones, such as Houtsinga, Arendt, and Fraser. So Houtsinga, his theory on play and how it's part of the human experience, and more than that, even part of just, I think, a biological experience for a lot of more sentient animals. Dogs love to play. I mean, just a lot of animals love to play. And it's just an interesting perspective on how we meet that need and what the difference between play and fun is. And how there is a separation between those two. It makes you think a little bit differently about what you do and what other people do for fun or to play. It really opened my mind that way. And then Fraser had this interesting idea of like coalitions of public interest, and that her theory definitely influenced me, but mainly against what she was saying. I think what she was saying was too idealistic for me. That kind of really started to help shape my personal theory of fun in public. She kind of goes into how like we should all get along in a way with our own. Everyone has their own interests and has their own publics, but these publics should interact with each other and express their needs with each other. And I feel like that it's not going to end up in a solution where we all come to an agreement or everyone's life is made better. I feel like that's just kind of where we are now. I think it actually strengthens the divides. I feel like if you put people with the same interests into one group arguing against people with other interests, there's never going to be a consensus there. I just don't think that's a possibility in human public discourse. So that's where Fraser really started to influence my theory on fun in public. The next one was Arendt, Hannah Arendt. And she had a very interesting theory on, she used Achilles as her example, but how if a hero has to die for their story to be completed, a hero most of the time has to die young too, because they never conquered that one goal that they were always striving for. They conquered many things. They were almost invincible, but there's that little bit of invincibility that comes out within them, and that's kind of what makes their story almost. How there's these great warriors that can conquer all, but at some point it catches up with them, and how the storyteller after someone dies is really who can make or break a legend. Like obviously Achilles did some amazing things in real life. I'm sure he did, but a lot of it is the storytelling and how he's perceived by other people and how his story was shared by others, and how that can kind of define a person after death. How that's kind of an interesting thing to be considering when you're alive, how you could be potentially, a lot of people, most people probably are looking forward to what comes to making a name for themselves, to becoming known, and how that's just kind of an influence on everyone in their life, and how they just want to be known. They want to have a story. They want to share their story. And I think that's an interesting thing to really be looking at. So my writing tends to be more cynical, but I don't want to be perceived as an inherently cynical person. I just like to take more of a realistic view on the world, and how I kind of like to look at the chaos of it. I think there's no true order to what's going on anywhere. I mean, this is all just something we made up as humans. I don't think there's any order to it. And Csikszentmihalyi, however you say it, you'll know who I'm talking about, Csikszentmihalyi. He really talks about flow. I think that's something really important, and also pleasure and enjoyment. But this idea of enjoyment and flow, and how enjoyment can lead to this state of just like forgetting what's around you, just losing a sense of self-consciousness, I would say. You're there, you're focused on one goal, and you just kind of do it. And it's an amazing human experience to experience flow personally. Everyone's done it. Everyone has their hobby, and it really sets you apart from the rest of the world, and it brings true enjoyment. And I think that's a really important thing to understand, is that a lot of times we're just so caught up in all this chaos that we don't really realize like what we enjoy personally, as well as many other things. I think the main reason I don't want to be looked at as a very cynical person is I just want to be seen as a person who realizes that everyone is on this earth more or less for themselves. Everyone's trying to survive. That's all we're here to do, effectively. We're just trying to survive. And I think that a lot of times that comes out in people. Not a lot of times it comes out. I think that looking out for yourself is something, it's part of the human experience. You can be a selfless person. That's definitely a possibility. There's some great people out there that do a lot of great things for other people, but I have a hard time thinking of the world becoming a place where people can trust one another fully. I feel like you're always going to fall back on yourself in times of distraught, when you're distraught, when there's something stressful in your life. A lot of times you fall back on yourself and what you can do to make that situation less stressful, as well as the other way around. When you're having fun, oftentimes you're not thinking of others, you're thinking of you and maybe your few close buddies that you're with, and how you can fulfill your enjoyment with your other buddies, and just kind of the social aspect of that as well, and how you can receive some sort of compliment, some feeling of goodness in yourself if you can increase the enjoyment of others. Yeah, so that leads me to my definition of fun in public. I believe fun in public is a very tight-knit thing. I think it's something that you can't do with a lot of people. I believe to truly have fun, you have to be with other people, or achieving a single goal you've had for a while. I think those are the two options here. I've kind of narrowed it down to. I feel that when you're with friends, there's this social interaction that we all crave as humans. We have to share our story that has to be out there. We also have to mold our story. So I think that as humans, the social aspect is very important to just enjoying life and having fun. I think you can go to a party or a football game, but it's going to be the people that you go with that are going to bring the enjoyment of the game. It's not necessarily going to be the game. I mean, or a party. How often do people go to parties alone, or football games alone, or like, even if they do, that there's often a lot of anxiety associated with that. So I think that knowing people is a big social thing, and it's very important to fun. I also think that if you could the getting back to the enjoyment thing of achieving one goal, having that flow, I think that's one of the only times you can really have fun um, on your own. I think when you're alone, you can oftentimes find pleasure in things. You keep yourself busy. Maybe you can you can do something. But if you have a hobby or an extreme interest in something, and you're really focusing on that and working towards that and trying to achieve your goal, I think that's one of the only other things in life that's really truly fun. Like personally, I love cars, so like sitting and looking at cars and how they work and learning about them is an enjoyable experience for me. I think that's truly fun. Um, and yeah, so then later in the class, we kind of moved also a little bit to a little more social injustice side. We talked about for a little bit with Warren, um, and her deal being silenced by Congress, as well as Beyonce and her performance at, um, at the Super Bowl. I think in social injustice for a lot of people, they believe it's selfishness, being naive. I don't think that's the case, to be honest. I think an intelligent, selfish person would surround himself with people who would want to help him. I don't think that people who are naive or selfish and intelligent, to be fair, would hate other people, would make enemies, because that doesn't help themselves. It really doesn't. I mean, obviously, not everyone's going to like you, but they're not. A truly smart person is not going to go out of their way to make enemies, unless for some other sort of political move. But I think what I think social injustice really is fear. I think that's the other side of this class that we didn't touch on as much. I think that if fun is a part of the human experience, so is fear. I think fear is almost the more overwhelming experience. I think that we almost always live in fear of being alone, uh, just fear of a lot of social anxieties, political anxieties, a lot of that stuff. I think fear is a main driver for a lot of this stuff, but I also believe fear is what allows fun. I think without fear or without fun, there's not the other. There has to be one side, or there has to be two sides to the spectrum, because otherwise it's just one dot. There's no line here where you have this whole range of human experience. So I think that the social injustice thing is, for me, is more an eye-opening thing on just, I think it's a big part of it is education, for sure. And I think it's totally all right to be in your own social circle. That's 100% acceptable, and you don't have to get along with everyone. I think that's how humans work. They make their own circles, and not everyone gets along. I think where it becomes an issue is when people start to fear this like primal instinct we have, where we fear neighboring tribes that could potentially take us over. And it's a difficult issue to understand. I mean, I don't have a full grasp on it. I don't think anyone can, but I do think that fear and fun are a huge part of public discourse and kind of what creates social injustice, because we are humans. We have different cultures, and our ideas of fun and what scares us even is different for each person everywhere in the world. And it's hard to blame people for not accepting other people's differences. I mean, that's a terrible thing. I think everyone should be accepting of one another. That's what I think should happen. But I just think the reality of it is not everyone will ever be accepting of each other. I think there's too many primal human instincts that kind of create this divide. But at the same time, I also think that's what makes us human. Without that, we're all the same. That's no fun. So there's a bit of a hierarchy here that I totally believe can be improved, and the well-being of everyone and the livelihood of everyone on Earth can 100% be improved. But I don't think that it will ever be equal. I don't think we want it to be equal. I think that gets rid of competition, it gets rid of fun, it gets rid of fear. We just become a hive mind, I believe, when that happens. So there is an aspect of that to this entire social injustice thing. Finally, just my thoughts on the class and how it changed me as a person. So actually, a few weeks into the class, I think it was after I read Frasier. It was after I read Frasier. I contacted one of my high school teachers back home that I really liked, and he had recommended a few books uh, that were similar to this class that we've been talking about in class. So I emailed him, asked him what they were. I didn't read the whole book, but he had given us a summary in class, and I just read the summary again, just kind of reminded myself of these books and just these other social theories I've kind of been implementing into my own. One of those is Bowling Alone, which is a great book, just kind of about how like it's just the decline of the activity in groups in America, like going to church. I mean, the title would be referring to bowling teams and bowling leagues, and how people don't really do that anymore. You just kind of go with a few friends or alone, even. That's just kind of the title there. And then also, there's another book. There's another book you referred to me. I didn't really use it as much. It wasn't that relevant. But I think this entire class, over the course, I've really honestly opened my mind up to thinking about a lot more things. Honestly, this class has been really influential to me. Truly, it's open. I love philosophical thinking. I love critical thinking. I like thinking deeper. And I don't like to implement or impose opinions on people. I actually really appreciate everyone's opinion. I try and take that as objectively as possible. So I think that's really helped with that, to be honest. I think that this class has been one of the first classes I've ever taken where I've really delved deep into a subject, and it's not like sciencey. It's observations. It's interesting to just try and make sense of what we have around us without the benefit of being able to look down upon it all. You're stuck within it. It's like looking at the Milky Way galaxy. We can't see it because we're in it. We can see other galaxies, but we can't see our own. And I think that's a lot like public discourse now. And I think the main takeaway I've honestly gotten from this class is just do what makes yourself happy. I think fun is an important part of human life, and no matter your situation or where you're in, I think that you got to do what you have to do to have fun. I think it's important. But at the same time, I also think there is still this humanity within us that we need to expand upon and really make everyone's life better. Like I said before, it'll never be equal. It shouldn't be equal, but everyone can attempt to make each other's lives better, and I think that's a really important thing. So where I see myself as a member of the DU community as a person in 4 years, hopefully I'm as knowledgeable as possible. Honestly, I'd like to take as many different courses as I possibly could. I like to have a scope of understanding for things, so I like to have at least a little bit of general knowledge on every topic. I think it's important to have some very serious knowledge on one topic, probably. I mean, I'm gonna major in business. That's probably what I'll be doing. That'll be my major focus. But I think that there's just so many elements that come into everything that you have to have a very broad experience. So I'm really hoping I can take as many classes in college that really open up my mind to new ideas, new things. I see myself as a person in 4 years as someone who's goal oriented. I think I'd really like to come out of this place with a goal, or at least an idea of what I'd like to be doing. And I think after that, that's when I can kind of settle down a little bit, really focus on what I want to do. That's what I hope that I can do in 4 years. I think this class has made me realize fun is an important part of that. So in the workplace, I'm going to try and have as much fun as possible. Not slack off, but have as much fun as possible. Make things as enjoyable as possible. I think that's a great thing. And I also understand how I think this class has really helped me with understanding in business how fun is important, and how I can implement that into whatever I end up doing in 4 years. So yeah, that's where I see myself in 4 years. Can't really think of much else. You know, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Anything could happen. Everything's gonna change, I'm sure. So that's all I can count on. Thank you.